I got broads in Atlanta. Just took the lean in the family. Credit cards and the scammers.
All right, if you are the average American that works hard, plays by the rules, pays their taxes, raises their kids, and serves the country every day, providing goods and services, good Americans need to step back tonight. This isn't about Republican, Democrat, conservative, or liberal at all. With no due process, zero corroborating evidence, the left in America is now smearing an individual, and they've been doing it now for 15 consecutive days, calling him evil, accusing him of being a serial rapist, a sexual predator, a violent drunk, a liar, a perjurer, and much more. Classic character assassination of a man who has served his country and has been in the spotlight now for almost 40 years without a single whiff of misconduct until 15 days ago. As we Americans now, we better get this as a country right, because a collective rush to judgment, getting rid of all presumption of innocence and due process, it is a clear and present danger to all of you, to every American. And tonight at a huge rally in Johnson City, Tennessee, President Trump stood up for his Supreme Court nominee and the pillar of what is America's justice system, the presumption of innocence. Let's watch the president.
Democrats are willing to do anything and to hurt anyone to get their way, like they're doing with Judge Kavanaugh. They've been trying to destroy him since the very first second he was announced, because they know that Judge Kavanaugh will follow the Constitution as written. And he's a good man, great student, great intellect, never had a problem. All of a sudden, oh, let's go back to high school. They maybe should go before high school. And then they want to take a lot longer with the FBI. No, the FBI, they should take, by the way, if we took 10 years, they'd want more time.
So here we are, day 15. The Democrats are attempting to stop Judge Kavanaugh at all costs. And by the way, at a wild press conference earlier today, the president let loose, had this to say about the important process that the media and Democrats, they're trying to now upend. This is dangerous. But he took it on. Take a look.
I want the FBI, this is now their 7th investigation, so it's not like they're, just starting. I want them to do a very comprehensive investigation, whatever that means according to the senators and the Republicans and the Republican majority. I want them to do that. And the reason I'd like it to go quickly, very simple. It's so simple. Because it's unfair to him at this point. What his wife is going through, what his beautiful children are going through, is not describable. It's not describable. It's not fair.
Now, of course, Kavanaugh's vote was once again delayed last week because the left successfully coerced one notoriously flaky Republican senator to go along with their demands. A new background check into the allegations made by Professor Christine Ford, limited in scope, only a week. This weekend, Senator Jeff Flake sat down with one of his Democratic colleagues on 60 Minutes to pat himself on the back for his heroic stance. He was out running for president in Massachusetts earlier today, but he did admit in the interview if he was seeking re-election, he never would have done this, ever, and caved to the Democratic demands. He's now their hero. Take a look.
You've announced that you're not running for re-election, and I wonder, could you have done this if you were running for re-election?
No, not a chance.
Not a chance?
No.
Because politics has become too sharp, too partisan?
Yeah, there's no value to reaching across the aisle. There's no currency for that anymore. There's no incentive.
I just lie like I always did. Now, tonight, the FBI's background check into Professor Ford. These are all important facts we've got to remember. It is well underway. But Rachel Mitchell, remember the independent prosecutor hired by the Senate Judiciary Committee to question both Professor Ford and Judge Kavanaugh? Well, she has already released her report to the Senate Judiciary Committee. In these findings, they're devastating. This is what she says. A he said, she said case is incredibly difficult to prove, but this case is even weaker than that. Dr. Ford identified other witnesses to the event, and those witnesses either refuted her allegations or failed to corroborate them. Now, for the reasons discussed below, I do not think any reasonable prosecutor would bring this case based on the evidence before the committee. And the prosecutor went on to list multiple issues where Professor Ford's accusations, including no consistent account of when the alleged assault actually happened, a failure to previously identify Judge Kavanaugh as the assailant, inconsistent descriptions of the alleged assault, a failure to remember key details, including who invited Ford to the party, how she got to the party, where the party even took place, and how she got home from the party. She does, however, remember unrelated details like the consumption of exactly one beer and that she took no medication that day. Another issue listed by prosecutors surrounds the fact that Ford's allegations have been corroborated by nobody, including a lifelong friend. And Dr. Ford also struggled to recall recent events related to her accusation, including the date of her polygraph test. Now, there are also inconsistencies with Ford's psychological trauma claims, including her alleged fear of flying. Now, despite the fact that she flies frequently, and many of her hobbies involve flying all over the world. And Rachel Mitchell also reported, quote, the activities of congressional Democrats and Dr. Ford's attorneys likely affected Dr. Ford's account. It is important to remember that Senator Feinstein, and this is where we get into facts matter, corroboration matters. She mentioned these four people. None of them corroborated her story, including an alleged eyewitness to the incident. And Dianne Feinstein played politics with Professor Ford's very serious claims from the very beginning. She knew about this in July. And last week, Senate Democrats demanding an FBI investigation. But Feinstein and her colleagues have known about this, as I said, since July. Where's their calls for an investigation into Keith Ellison? Or for that matter, Juanita Broderick and Bill Clinton? Why didn't Senator Feinstein ask Kavanaugh about these allegations when they met personally? Well, why, at the very same time she's advising Professor Ford on what attorney to hire, instead of contacting her with a qualified, experienced, nonpartisan lawyer, well, Feinstein suggested what turns out to be a partisan left-winger, big-time Democratic donor named Deborah Katz, once proclaimed on national TV she would resist President Trump. She dismissed Paula Jones. Well, it was only 10 to 12 minutes. Excuse me. He exposed himself, Bill Clinton, at the time. That was the allegation. And then she defended creepy Senator Al Franken. And according to a report from the Washington Free Beacon tonight, one of Katz's close friends is now searching for anyone willing to come forward against Kavanaugh. They're sending out emails to people, literally soliciting people as late as last week. Now, if Feinstein cared about getting to the truth, why suggest a Democratic hack that's inconsistent on what is a serious issue today? And meanwhile, even though Professor Ford requested her name remain private, it was leaked because congressional Democrats were the only officials with access to her story, and Senate Republicans are now vowing, rightly so, to investigate Dianne Feinstein and the Democrats' handling of this case. Of course, Senator Feinstein is denying any responsibility for the leaks, but earlier today, President Trump called out the senator for her shameless political tactics, and they were shameless. Take a look.
Dianne Feinstein knew about this 2 months earlier. If she wanted a really thorough investigation, we had all the time in the world. She didn't have to wait till after the hearing was closed, essentially. She should have said, listen, I have a problem. I have this report. I'd like the FBI to look at it while we're doing the hearings. We had 2 months for the Democrats to be talking about we want more time for the FBI. If you wanted more time for the FBI, why didn't Dianne Feinstein bring this up?
Why didn't she? America deserves an answer to that question. And why didn't she tell her Republican colleagues and then say, oh, we need time, we can't rush this? We had plenty of time. And Democrats are continuing their political stall tactics. Last week, it was a narrow investigation, limited to only a week. Now, despite President Trump ordering the FBI to investigate any and all legitimate claims, it's still not enough for the left. They want FBI investigations into every single claim made against Kavanaugh, no matter how unsubstantiated. And some are even calling for investigations into whether or not Kavanaugh lied about how much he drank in high school. He said sometimes he drank a lot, like a lot of kids in high school and college. Now, that's called moving the goalposts. That's called changing the game in the middle of it. And as we've been saying for months, they want to stall the nomination. They want the midterm elections. These facts all matter because 36 days, we, the people, do you want to put these people in power? They want to impeach the president, endless investigation. They want their crumbs back. They want open borders, and they want to keep Obamacare. Of course, if the FBI does extend the investigation into the second accuser, then the third accuser, well, we already know about the second accuser, and we find, again, unsubstantiated claims from a woman who's claiming that Kavanaugh may have exposed himself to her at a drunken college party when he was a college freshman. She doesn't really remember. In fact, she said she wasn't totally sure if Kavanaugh was the perpetrator. She called around, according to the New York Times, to see if they remembered the incident, whether it was him. They did not. And she even acknowledges that she has significant memory gaps from that evening. New York Times refused to report the story because of the lack of evidence. And, of course, is the third accuser. Her name is Julie Swetnick. In this case, the FBI is likely to find a lot of inconsistencies from her wild allegations. Remember, she's claiming Kavanaugh was involved in the serial drugging and gang rape scheme in the 80s that happened almost every weekend. And she went to 10 of these parties. And today, Swetnick, represented by the all-fame-seeking attorney Michael Avenatti, the new face of the Democratic Party, sat down with NBC News in what turned out for NBC by the end of the day to be a disaster. Take a look.
In that statement, Swetnick said she became aware of efforts by Kavanaugh and his friend Mark Judge to spike punch at parties. In our interview, she said she saw them near the punch, but did not specifically say she saw either man spike it.
Did you see Brett Kavanaugh, you know, spiking the punch, putting grain alcohol in the punch?
I saw him giving red Solo cups to quite a few girls during that time frame. I saw him around the punch, I won't say bowls, or the punch containers. I don't know what he did, but I saw him buy them.
Are there friends who remember these parties too and remember you?
Oh, I think
going?
everybody in the county remembers those parties.
Because we haven't heard from those friends, so I'm asking, you know, are there people alive today who would say, I went to those parties with
Yes,
Julie?
there are people that know about those parties.
This morning, Swetnick provided 4 names of friends she says went to the parties with her. One of them said he does not recall a Julie Swetnick. Another of the friends she named is deceased. We've reached out to the other 2 and haven't heard back.
Still zero corroboration. The same NBC News that sat on that interview with Juanita Broderick when she was making rape allegations about Bill Clinton, they refused to air it for over a month, all because they said it couldn't be corroborated. They needed time to vet it. NBC this is a disgrace. This is not news. This is them letting an individual make uncorroborated claims and then just airing it. Here they are running totally unverified, uncorroborated claims against Judge Kavanaugh, and multiple inconsistencies yet again. Are there any new standards over there? Should we at all be surprised? This is now an unmitigated disaster for NBC News. By the way, Tom Brokaw, if you're watching or somebody calls you in 3 minutes, would you air this? You need to speak out publicly. You spent your whole life trying to build that brand. All 3 of these stories do have one thing in common: zero corroborating evidence, outright denials of so-called witnesses, and many inconsistencies. After all, this is how your mainstream media is now treating the ongoing Supreme Court battle. This weekend, a cartoonist drew this vile depiction of Judge Kavanaugh's young daughter praying for her, quote, angry, lying, alcoholic father for sexually assaulting Dr. Ford. Never made it into a newspaper. The cartoonist published it online on his own. Didn't return our request for comment. Shocking. And then there's the media darling, James Comey. He, of course, is calling for an unlimited time frame for FBI investigations and bashing anybody, get this, who won't sit down with FBI investigators, writing, quote, most people will speak to the FBI. Refusal to do so is its own kind of statement. And I'm thinking, really? Ask General Flynn and George Papadopoulos about speaking to the FBI. That literally worked out perfect for them. In the case of even General Flynn, they didn't think he lied. He was charged with lying. Now, when you see all these anti-Kavanaugh op-eds and people like Jim Comey asking for more information, when you see the media rushing to judgment, when you see Democrats demanding more and more investigations, you've got to remember this one clear point, and this is what matters tonight. This is all about politics. It's now about power. It's not about the truth. Democrats have been against Kavanaugh publicly from the day he was announced. No matter what this investigation finds, they're never going to vote for him anyway. They never were. It's likely every single important event in modern history. This is a matter that we better get right. If you don't have evidence and you're going to rush to judgment and you're going to have zero presumption of innocence, by the way, this is not the first time. Ferguson, Missouri, Richard Jewell, Baltimore, Maryland, Cambridge Police, Duke Lacrosse, UVA rape allegations, now Judge Kavanaugh, Clarence Thomas. We have a party of smear, slander, lies, and no due process. None. This shouldn't be political. And all their left-wing friends in the mainstream media, the deep state, are backing them up all along the way. There is no life they're not willing to destroy for power. No reputation they won't defile. No process they won't corrupt at this point. No issue they won't politicize. And that means there's no shame. Their actions are literally, as we speak, reprehensible. And we've got a lot to get to tonight.